we are mildly interesting guys, and we talk about some stuff. So welcome to the podcast, we call it Joel the Podcast. It's Alex and it's Alex, here for Joel the Podcast. Bzzz. Hello everybody, I'm Alex.
And I'm Alex.
And this is our podcast,
Joel.
Welcome to episode 77 of Joel the Podcast. I'm glad I remembered.
That's
Listening
right.
back, I almost never remember, and it's kind of bad. So it's good that you just asked me about episode 76 right before we started, because I probably would have said 76 otherwise. So remember 5 minutes ago when we said we were going to do that sports thing?
Yeah.
And we didn't
And
talk
then we
about it
didn't.
beforehand?
No. So let's
All right.
let's explain our reasoning.
Let's start it
And
next week.
then-
We'll do normal sports and we'll tell everyone about it this week.
Right.
And
That's
then
what
we'll
I'm
do-
thinking.
We'll start with that next week. Which will be a perfect week to start it, I think.
Yeah. It
Our
will.
2 year.
Good point.
Okay, so for almost 2 years now, we have been giving weekly sports updates, which as far as I know, nobody who listens to this podcast is actually interested in. But we kept doing it because we like talking about it. And so as I've been listening back to our episodes so I can come up with highlights, I've decided that I'm not really interested in hearing about what was going on in sports 6 months ago, because it already happened and I know what the result was, and it's not that interesting to me. So
Yeah.
I suggested
I
that. Go ahead.
I think I find it mildly interesting, but at the same, I definitely agree with the sentiment, and I don't think I have, including all of last year's episodes, I don't think we clipped any highlights from the sports update.
Right. So, I think what's going to happen is... So I suggested we just remove it. Nathan said he finds it mildly interesting. So what we're going to try, starting next week apparently, is doing a very lightning round style sports update. So we'll talk about it before the podcast, and then we'll do a 1 minute recap of what happened in sports that week, with probably minimal, if any, commentary from ourselves. And that'll be that.
Thinking about it a little bit more, I'm wondering if the talking about it in advance will be just interesting enough, which I think is the whole point you were trying to get across. I'm not sure. I don't know.
The
We'll
thing is,
see.
I like talking about sports, so
Right.
I definitely do want to talk about it at some point. I was just So, all right. So we will be doing that starting next week. So keep an ear out for that. So with that out of the way, I wanted to remind everyone that Nathan does not owe me $1.
Alex, I believe at some point this week did pay me $1. So for another couple of days now, neither of us owes the other $1.
Right. The inauguration is this week, so we'll see starting next week what the deal is on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's pretty good timing, honestly, because we, managed to milk the $1 bet from the last, what was that, 4 episodes ago?
Yeah, something like that.
Stretch that out until the next one comes due. So, I mean,
I guess.
on one
but the
hand,
thing-
good job.
I guess, but I don't really know if it's actually more interesting to hear somebody say he owes me $1 versus he doesn't owe me $1. So, yeah,
Fair
I guess
enough.
good job us is what I'm saying here.
Yep.
So sports wise, the Flyers started their season last week, and they're
All
2-0.
That's pretty good.
Yep. And they are playing tonight, so we'll see how that goes. The 76ers won 2 games against the Heat, who were also down players due to COVID-19. and they had a game canceled last night because of contact tracing, and they lost a game. So they're doing okay. The thing is, they haven't really lost a game with like full. They've lost like one game where they were like everyone was playing.
Right.
So it's really hard to say exactly how bad or how well they've done. But hopefully they should be getting back on track soon. What else? Philadelphia sports related. Nothing else Philadelphia sports related. The Purdue basketball team beat Indiana. Woo!
Yes. At
the
Indiana too, so another good road win.
And
also Indiana scored 69 points, so that was very nice of them.
And Purdue also beat Penn State. Since the last episode.
So since
the last
we podcasted last time for the first time in... Nope, that's not the joke from last episode. Never mind.
Okay. So Purdue received one vote in the AP poll today.
Ooh, actually I'm kind of surprised it's just one.
Yeah, me too.
If you look at obviously Purdue doesn't have like a great win, but if you look at the current Big Ten standings, all of the teams ahead of Purdue are ranked, and some of the teams behind Purdue are ranked, but Purdue is notably not ranked.
In my opinion, Purdue has consistently played like a 20-something ranked team.
Yes.
So I would be surprised if by the end of the season they weren't ranked in the 20s. So the next 3 games, assuming they continue to play at their current level, so the next 3 games are at 21 Ohio State, at home versus 7 Michigan, and at home versus 23 Minnesota.
Should be very easy because Minnesota has been garbage on the road.
Minnesota is 11-0 at home, including beating Michigan, and 0-4 on the road. So I'm tentatively counting that as a positive for Purdue. Yeah. We already beat Ohio State. This game we're on the road, so it will be harder.
Yep.
But we definitely can beat them. And obviously Michigan will be tough, but at least we get it at home. So I would say if we go 2-3 in the next 3 games,
that would be ridiculous.
2-1 rather. 2 out of 3 wins. You know what I mean?
Yes. I do now. I didn't know where you came up with those numbers before, but now I understand why you were
right.
Why that? Yes.
So that would be pretty good in my opinion.
Yep, for sure.
So,
I think if we did do that also, since all 3 of the teams we're playing are ranked, if we went 2-3, no. Now you
2-1.
made me say it. If they went 2-1, I think Purdue would be ranked.
Yeah. Also, the more importantly, they would have land on the college basketball imperialism map, probably, because Minnesota took all of Michigan's land.
Oh, that's right.
Minnesota plays only 1 game between then and now, and it's at home for them, so they're won't
guaranteed
lose.
To win it.
So if we beat them in that game, we will get all their land.
That would be fantastic, I'm sure, because Michigan was undefeated up until that right. game, so that's got to be quite a bit of land.
Yep. So, yeah. All right.
I still have a screenshot of the post immediately after the Purdue Ohio State game.
In
where
football?
In football, where Purdue had just ridiculous amounts of land because it was halfway through the season.
Right.
They upset Ohio State. And that was a good time.
Right.
So, all right, well, there you go. Are there any other sports?
Well, Tom Brady beat Drew Brees this weekend in what is likely to be Drew Brees' last game. There are reports that he's planning on retiring, so...
All right. Well, he had a good run.
And Tom Brady now has played a full 16 games in the divisional round of the playoffs, and he's 14-2 in those games.
Wow.
And he now has
That's absurd.
8 playoff wins against NFC opponents, which is the same number as Drew Brees. So, and he's been in the AFC for almost his entire career except this year.
Yeah. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I love crazy Tom Brady stats like that. So,
Yeah.
congrats to Brady on making another championship game. I guess.
Isn't there another round?
Yep.
No.
The NFC
Yes?
Championship game.
Oh, but don't they play wait. Wait a
They-
minute. No, wait. Is it the Packers?
Yes.
Yes. All right.
So
So
they're
you
playing
think
the
they'll beat the
Packers in the-
Packers?
They'll be playing the Packers
Oh,
in the NFC Championship
You
game.
just meant the NFC Championship, not like the Super Bowl
Right.
Championship.
The Super Bowl I would call the Super Bowl.
That makes sense now that
Yeah.
you've said it.
Um,
Cool.
yeah. So, but yeah, congratulations to Drew Brees, if he is indeed retiring, on an amazing career, one of the best quarterbacks of all time, no doubt. He leads the league, or leads all time in career passing yards. He has multiple, I think 4, last I looked, or maybe 5 of the top 10 completion percentage single seasons
Wow.
in NFL history. So, really one of the best to ever do it, and a Purdue alumnus. So,
Yep. I wonder
would
if you'd
take-
be interested in coaching at Purdue.
I wonder if you'd be interested in coming on the podcast. Drew Brees, if
yeah,
you're interested
so-
in coming on the podcast, send us an email, which can be found at our website, alexandalex@joelthepodcast.github.io/alexandalex@joelthepodcast.website, and we would love to receive an email from you.
Yeah, we can. I know we just said that we were going to cancel the sports section, but I think if we
We'll
had
have
Drew
an
Brees
entire
as a guest, we
sports
might be
episode,
obligated to have a sports episode.
Yes. By the way, I don't know if you noticed what I did there, but I said you can email us, which can be found at our website, and then instead of saying which is, I just paused, took a breath, and said Alex, and started saying it. So I was able to naturally take a breath before I started saying it.
Brilliant.
So-
You know what? That was so under the radar. I didn't even notice at all.
Thank you.
That's clearly the way it
For all
should
the-
be done.
For all the listeners, just rewind 30 seconds and listen to me do it again, because it was pretty impressive.
It was a masterpiece. In fact, I would, if we were a proper podcast with like an editing team, I would make them clip it right here so you could listen to it again. But since I have to
Right.
do the editing, I don't think we're going to do that.
By the way, I listened to the episode where we were answering questions, our first advice episode, 62, I believe.
Uh-huh.
It's the one where at the end we were giving Snowy Woodson your address so that he could come live with you.
I remember that.
And you stuck the theme song in the part where you said the address.
Yep.
And I thought that was pretty funny.
Man, that was a good joke.
I forgot about the line. Maybe I shouldn't say it on the podcast because we're definitely going to play it as one of the highlights, but I'm going to say it anyway because it's so funny. When you were like, when I said, wait, wasn't it this? And you were like, oh, no, I understand why I made the mistake because I recently moved and it changed, the street and zip code and state. And you said like every single, I botched the delivery. You said like every single different part of the address when you said it. It was very funny. So,
Oh, man. We're hilarious. We're so good at podcasting.
Man,
It's
everyone is
incredible.
privileged to be able to listen to us.
Yeah.
All right, and we're so
I just want to
humbled.
say you're welcome, everyone. And
And now we're going to launch
hopefully
to
we
a
won't-
full musical number of You're Welcome from Moana. Oh. All right.
for a second, I thought you were going to, I obviously that was the correct reference to make, but I thought for some reason you were going to just, based on what we're about to do, I thought you were going to make it a musical instead, which was going to be
Oh, we should make it a musical.
okay. I mean,
Yeah, that's great.
sure.
Oh, man, that's perfect. Okay, so
Here we go.
so that leads us very smoothly into the episode today, in which we're going to be making a movie, which we were going to do last week before we spent the entire episode talking about Joel the Game.
Right.
So we're going to do a movie this episode, and I know what many of you are thinking is, wait a minute, isn't there a rule that specifically prohibits them from doing a movie when no one else is there? And you would be right in saying that there is that rule, but recently we discovered a new rule that had always been there, that actually allowed us to make a movie indeed. So
Right.
we will be using that non-loophole, extremely valid rule that we found and making a movie today. And as I guess we just kind of decided, it will be a musical, because I think that's great. I think it would be great if it's a musical, but it's not like the type of movie that really lends itself to being a musical.
It's just really inconveniently a musical. All right,
so
I
assume
am
you're pulling
100% on board now.
I assume you're pulling up the story generator thing?
Yeah, so one of the episodes I recently listened to was one where we made a movie. The most recent time we made a movie about the art vandals. And
Yep.
it was going so well. I was like, man, why did we stop making movies? And then, like, right as it was getting kind of interesting, it cut to the bit where we were explaining that the recordings had just stopped. So,
Yup. It happens
it all
every
came
time.
back.
It happened that time, and then with the police episode, it also happened. And that episode was so frustrating because we recorded it. I lost like 7 minutes of my audio, so I went back and re-recorded over it, which took so much effort. And then we were like, "Oh, we're missing some other audio. We can't do it." And it was like, okay. But so this time we've got I'm recording. We've got the Skype recording. You're recording.
Yep.
There should be no issues. This movie will go off without a hitch.
Right.
I'm not even gonna knock on wood.
No, this is so
if,
jinx proof right now. There's no
if
possible
it goes poorly,
way it could
this is gonna be a real bad look. But
I'm just waiting for my power to go out or something. Anyway, the reason I brought that episode up is because in that episode, I said that our story generator came from thejohnfox.com, which is the only reason that I remember now to go to thejohnfox.com. So thank you once again to thejohnfox.com. Hopefully if I say it enough, when I listen back to this episode, it'll be, ingrained in my memory again for the next time we try and do this.
Yeah, and I can totally see why you keep saying thejohnfox.com, because, we're really appreciative of him being the John Fox, all right, let's see what thejohnfox.com says.
But before we jump in, if I have one piece of advice for thejohnfox.com, honestly, if you're the website administrator and you're listening to this, that domain is a bit of a mouthful. You might want to consider changing it to something a bit more simple, kind of like our podcast email.
Right. I was thinking it would be something like www.thejohnfox.github.io/thejohnfox.website. I almost said Alex and Alex podcast.website. Man, it's so much shorter to just say
I
The
totally
John Fox
agree.
instead of Alex and Alex at Joel the Podcast.
Yeah. All right. So, but as you said, let's get right to it. We've got the generator pulled up. Here's our first prompt. What do you think about this? A woman in her 50s must explain to her younger sister why she ditched their family many decades ago. What is her secret, and what surprise does the younger sister have to tell her?
Okay. So, that's actually a pretty decent story idea. One issue I see is that I think it lends itself fairly well to a musical.
Yeah.
Although it may be possible to pick the secret and the reason well enough that it's not a good musical. What do you think?
I think it's certainly possible to do that. Maybe we should let me copy this prompt. Maybe we'll take a look at a couple others just to see if anything jumps out at us a bit more. Because honestly, this is pretty open ended, and it's definitely not bad, but nothing really speaks to me about it the same way that the Art Vandals quote did, or the father son bowling connection.
Right. So can I interrupt you for 1 second? Can I interrupt you for 1 second before you read the next one? This is totally unrelated. So we just mentioned the website Alex and Alex at joelthepodcast.github.io/Alex and Alex at joelthepodcast.website. And I hadn't been to the website in a while, so I went to the website. And first of all, the website name takes up like half the address bar, so that's awesome. But a while ago we made a minor edit to our cover art, and started using that on YouTube videos, and we decided it's kind of really too small to actually see, what is there.
Yeah.
But on the website we have our cover art, and you can zoom in on the website and actually see what it is.
Really?
If you know where to look. So
that's a fun fact. If you're a listener to this podcast and you go to our website, which you most likely do every time you email us. If you take a look at our cover art, which is posted there, which is apparently, like you just said, a full-size image, which explains why it's taking forever to load right now. it's like scrolling, slowly loading.
Yeah,
down
mine
the
did
image.
that too.
Like classic 2002 internet picture, just slowly coming more and more into view.
Right.
But anyway, if you send us a screenshot of our Easter egg, I will mail you if you include your physical address, I will mail you a podcast related surprise.
And by the way, I just realized that if you go to the store page, there's a link at the top to the store, but it's just another mail to link to our email.
Oh man, it's things like this. This is why I like doing stupid stuff for the podcast, because then like 3 months later I forgot all of the dumb jokes that I made in the thing, and we can go back and laugh at it ourselves.
Right. Although I also see that the homepage is actually index.html, so I think every time we say the website we should include that. Alex and Alex at joelthepodcast.github.io/Alex and Alex at joelthepodcast.website/index.html. So we can make it a little bit longer. And
sure.
More convenient
I mean,
for
just
our
for that would be a good idea, just for clarification. That way nobody ends up on the wrong page of our website by mistake.
Right. I think that's important. All right. So with that out of the way, let's hear the second idea.
Here's the second idea. A struggling actor in Hollywood takes on the most embarrassing job ever so she can continue to go to auditions. What is it, and how long does she keep it a secret from her boyfriend?
This is a perfect movie musical, which makes me not want to pick it, but it's such a good idea that makes me want to pick it.
It's really good because it's got all of the good things about the other one, while also, in my opinion, being a more interesting situation.
Right. Honestly,
but it screams musical at me. So I mean,
right. Honestly, I think that any movie plot that doesn't lend itself well to musicals is gonna be too dark and not funny for us to make a funny movie based on it.
Sure.
So it may be worth just taking one of these well lending themselves to... Okay, that's terrible. Ideas that lend themselves well to musicals.
Yeah.
And just try to make it funny with the musical anyway.
Despite our best efforts, we picked a good musical idea, so...
Alright, so
do
we want to go with this one?
I'm pretty on board with this one. Let's take a few minutes here and try and... What's this job?
So why don't you just read it one more time?
All right, here we go.
This is the one we're going with.
So we'll commit to this one. Here we go. A struggling actor in Hollywood takes on the most embarrassing job ever so she can continue to go to auditions. What is it, and how long does she keep it a secret from her boyfriend? Who is obviously named Joel.
Right. So what is the job? So we need to figure out what is the job.
You're right.
So... let's see. She lives in Hollywood, so... So what? My first thought was some LA-related sports job, like rink girl for the LA Kings, but that's kind of not that good.
Yeah, I don't know that we can... Unfortunately, I don't think we can make jokes about LA sports, because they're all good.
Well, the LA Kings aren't that good, so. And also the
Yeah,
Clippers.
I suppose you picked kind of the best case scenario, embarrassing LA sport that, hasn't won a title recently.
Also, the Angels aren't that good, and also the Clippers were pretty good, except they were joked because they choked in the playoffs last year.
Right.
So-
Yeah, there's definitely some easy memes about the Clippers, but I don't know, let's just see. I'll Google embarrassing jobs.
Right. Well, the thing is, it can't be a normal embarrassing job, but maybe this will get our creative juices flowing.
Yeah. All right. ScreenRant.com has embarrassing jobs actors had before fame.
Perfect.
And let me
That's
tell
exactly
you,
what we want.
almost none of these jobs are going to be embarrassing.
For sure, obviously.
That's my
Otherwise
prediction.
They wouldn't tell anyone, but go on.
Right. Whoopi Goldberg was a mortuary beautician.
That's so embarrassing.
Sean Connery was a coffin polisher. That's a weird overlap to have happened twice between, the funeral business and
Right.
acting.
Not a good one, but Walmart greeter is probably the most embarrassing one that's been said so far.
Brad Pitt was a chicken mascot.
Ooh.
Actually, you
that's
know
a
what?
pretty good one.
She could be a mascot for one of the sports teams if we wanted to go that route, or
Yeah,
a mascot for like some, I don't know, like a food chain or something. She could be Wendy.
Right. She could be like one of the people who stands out on the street outside of a store and like in a costume and like holds a sign that says like
Yeah.
sale today. Okay.
Okay.
No. This is so good. Okay. So that's their job. That's her job.
Uh-huh.
And her boyfriend comes to the store all the time, or
Oh,
even better. Well, he probably can't work there. That would be too ridiculous for him to not know. But he comes to the store all the time
Right.
and doesn't know that it's her.
So
and they get
she's
some
got
kind of-
this like she's told him that she's acting in like a TV show or something, or no, probably not a TV show or something, but she's got some sort of acting job. Maybe she's acting in some kind of like, I don't know, corporate training video or something kind of strange that he wouldn't be like
the corporate
able to
training
watch.
video is the embarrassing job.
Is it like? Wait. So
No,
is
that
she
was a
like?
joke. That was a joke.
Okay, all right, never mind. We'll forget that then. So.
Right.
She's got some sort of cover story that she's got this acting job, and it's not an acting job that he would like, expect to see the end product.
Right.
So she always tells him that she's going off to do some shooting for that, but she's actually going to be the fast food mascot.
Right.
And he's like, all right, cool. My girlfriend's about to be famous. I'm just gonna, like, he quits his job and just hangs out at the fast food place and like.
Okay. Here's some ideas. These are just total brainstorm, so they might
Yeah.
not stick. Number one. Even though the she never says anything as the fast food mascot, he starts falling in love with her, not knowing that she's already his girlfriend.
Yes.
And then he like eventually is like in this moral dilemma. He's like, I'm in love with this chicken mascot, but I already have a girlfriend.
Right.
Okay, so that's an idea. And then
So the end
another
of the end of the movie obviously would be him like in this like really emotional scene. He breaks up with the girl, and then like goes and confesses his love to the chicken. And she
she's
like,
are you fucking kidding me right now?
she's like pissed. She's just.
Right.
Oh, man.
And another idea is she doesn't tell him. She doesn't make a good job of making an excuse of what her job actually is. She tells him like she's in some musical, so he does expect to like go to the musical at the end. And so she's
Okay.
like in this conundrum where there's no actual musical, so I don't know she's gonna show him. But
All right, I think that's a good idea. I think that's source of tension. Also, musical within a musical is like a classic musical idea.
yes. Okay. So
We're
All
starting
right.
to see the pieces here.
Right. So let's get this out of the way just so we can move on. What store or restaurant is she the mascot for? It can also be a fictional store or mascot, or sorry, store or restaurant, if we can think of a like if we want to have her be something specific.
Right. That's kind of the direction I was thinking, is like, what kind of mascot should she be? And so kind of based on some of the things we've said, it sounds like she needs to be in like a full body costume.
Right.
But, well, I mean, depending on how much sense you want it to make, maybe you should still be able to tell that she's like, you know, some sort of like young female person.
No, I have no
Just
no interest
no.
in making that clear.
All right, so Joel is just randomly falling in love with, like, for no reason, absolutely none.
Right. Well, I imagine Joel is like interpreting her silence when he talks to her as some like profound like thing, and is like falling in love that way. So it's not like he's just like talking and then falls in love, right? Like,
Okay.
It's a series of incredibly stupid misunderstandings and misconceptions.
She's just inside the costume panicking because she doesn't want to be found out.
Right.
Meanwhile, yeah, it's he's just perceiving it as this really deep connection that they're forming.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in that case, there's no like real limitation on what she should be. I kind of think she should be a corn dog.
Okay.
That's just a kind of a feeling I'm getting right now.
Right.
I'm
See,
not
the thing is-
I'm not sold on the idea, but I mean,
Right, that's possible. This is not really a requirement. It's just I would prefer if we pick a costume where realistically their face would not be visible. Because I feel like if you had an actual corn dog costume, there would just be a cutout where your face was, because
Sure.
corn dogs don't already have faces.
okay, so we need something that has a face, so that thing's face would be.
I really can't think of anything better than a chicken is the problem. Like, a chicken is a pretty ridiculous costume.
It's also a pretty classic restaurant, you know. Pretty much any restaurant could have a chicken mascot,
right.
whether it's like a fried chicken specific place, or it, you know, honestly could just be like a classic American fast food thing that happens to also have chicken nuggets or whatever.
Right. So, okay, so do we think chicken is it then?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that we can do much better than that,
All right,
realistically.
so it's a chicken, and the store is. What if it was something that was totally unrelated to chickens? Like, what if it was an electronics store that was called like chickens? You know, I don't know, but it was
Sure.
it was called like Chickens Electronics Emporium. So even though, and then she was a chicken as a result of that, rather than it being like it was a restaurant chain that sells
in
chicken.
that
which
in
would be
that
the
case, in that case, why does the boyfriend keep going back?
Honestly, I feel like he would go one or two times for legitimate purposes, and then every time after that, he just like is finding excuses to go back so he can
Right.
see the chicken mascot.
Okay, and then, and she's like, why does he keep coming back? I literally, I know he doesn't have any reason to be here. What's going on? He's found me out. He's just biding his time to.
And she'll be concerned because she'll be like, "Oh, so what are you doing today?" And he'll be like, "Oh, nothing much, just going to work." Meanwhile, she knows that he's like just keeps coming to the electronics store.
Oh man, the other thing that just occurred to me is that like, clearly at some point she needs to have like a musical number in the chicken costume
Yes.
with him like in the store somewhere.
Right, they will definitely have a musical number together while she's in the chicken costume, where her singing, she's like singing her inner thoughts. It wouldn't be like she's singing to him, because then obviously he would recognize her voice. So
Maybe at that point they're both singing their inner thoughts.
yeah,
And you get the sense of
Like that's a
she's like, I know it's him and I'm panicking, and he's like,
Right.
I have no idea who this is, but
that's the
we're
musical
meant to
number.
be together.
It's the musical number where he finally realizes that he's in love with this chicken mascot, right? Like he's singing his inner feelings of like how he's in love, and she's singing her inner feelings of confusion and panic because her boyfriend is falling in love with a mute chicken mascot. And
So
he might... Go ahead.
Does she realize at any point before the reveal at the end that he's like into the chicken?
Well, I don't feel like he's actually into the chicken. I think he's into the person inside the costume for sure.
Okay, yeah, that's what I mean though. So is she understanding that he's like, you know, falling in love with her as the person in the mascot, not as in his like actual girlfriend, or is she just kind of like oblivious and she's kind of like panicking, not understanding why he's still there, like why he keeps coming back?
In the beginning, it's like that. She like is confused. Like he must know that I'm in this costume, right? But as it goes on, it becomes clearer and clearer that he doesn't know it's her, and that he's falling in love with her anyway. Also,
At what point then would what? So at some point, I feel like she would, if she realized that he didn't know it was her, but was also falling in love with her. Why wouldn't she at some point just be like, "Hey, it's me. I'm breaking up with you, and you're an idiot."
That's a good point. I was just about to say
and
the
also,
exact same thing.
For pride reasons, I have also been lying all along. Do they just get back together in that instant?
No,
like,
absolutely. This is a happily ever after type of movie because if you think about it, he was really just falling in love with her. So it's not like he was actually doing anything improper, even though it was clearly weird and wrong that he was falling in love with a mute person in a chicken mascot.
What I'm hearing is it's not cheating if you're accidentally still just cheating with your partner.
Yes.
So it's like the Pina
Shelby,
Colada
keep that
song.
in mind for any mascot-related hijinks you have in mind. All right.
for when one or both of us buys our mascot costumes secretly, and develops a separate life where we secretly interact with the other. Anyway, so it ends. It's a good ending. We've determined
it's a happy ending, even though everyone in the audience is like,
"What? What?
What is this? This is nothing. What is this?" Right. So, or if we wanted, we could have a heartwarming ending where, in the end, he rejects his relationship, any potential relationship with the chicken mascot, so that he can be with his girlfriend, and then, like, he gives like a big speech to her in the mascot where he's like,
he confesses to the chicken.
Is real, but I'm with someone and I love her too, and I just can't break up and take the mask off. Like, oh my gosh, I love you so much, right? So we could do a more sappy ending if we wanted to as well.
Right. So on one hand, I like that as a real ending, but on the other hand, just like the ridiculousness of the other version, I think could be could be a good factor here. So maybe we should kind of like back up a little bit and start going through things and see how we feel when we get to the end.
Well, before we do that, we still have to answer your original question, which is why doesn't she just take her mask off and be like, "It's me, you idiot, and you're falling in love with a chicken mascot."
Right. Maybe. Maybe she's trying. So maybe she's like. Alright. Here it is, potentially.
Sure.
She's like really embarrassed about, obviously really embarrassed about having to take this job.
Right.
And she's like trying to, to act all rude to this guy so that he'll stop. Because she understands what's going on at some point, like you said. But she doesn't have like the self-confidence to stand up for herself in that position. because she's already in this crappy chicken suit job.
Right. Right.
So
okay,
she's
so,
like already embarrassed enough and doesn't want to, like, on top of ending this relationship, reveal that she's in this chicken suit.
Right. So what she okay, so here's what it is. So right. So it sounds like what you're saying, and I think this is a good plan, is her response to finding out that he's falling in love with her isn't to be mad at him and, reveal that it's her and break up with him. It's to try and stop him from falling in love with her without revealing who she is.
Right.
Which is perfect, because then there's tons of hijinks related chicken costume things we can do there.
It's all ridiculous, and it just absolutely doesn't work.
Right, and he keeps
because
falling
he's
for the
got
dumbest things. Like, she'll punch him or attack him, and he'll be like, "Oh, you can't hold back your love for me either," and it's like, no. All right. So yeah, let's start completely going oblivious. So,
all right.
Opening musical number.
Right. I feel like the opening musical number has to be an actual scene from a musical that she's acting in, right? Well, so she's there's this whole, she's one of the, maybe she's not one of the main characters, but she's looking up to the main character. She's the sidekick kind of character. And they're performing together, and you kind of get the sense that she's like, oh man, I want to be that. I want to be the main character. And the end, they're building up to this triumphant moment in the musical, where the sidekick character would be breaking through and doing something great. But at that point, the musical director is like, all right, cut. This isn't working out. Listen, you gotta go. It's not working. And she gets fired at the end of the opening musical number, basically.
I actually think that's a good second musical number. I feel like the purpose of the opening musical number is to mainly just kind of introduce the characters, and I feel like I like that idea because it sets up what the actual plot is. And
yeah.
What if I'm hesitant to do that because nowhere in that do you meet the boyfriend, which you have to meet the boyfriend in the opening musical number.
Here's my counter proposal, and we can definitely still make that the second one because I think that's a pretty good idea too.
Mm-hmm.
But if we do stick with that being kind of the opening thing where it really introduces her, and she gets fired, she can then immediately go home and meet the boyfriend. It wouldn't necessarily be in that first musical number, but it would obviously happen right away.
Mm-hmm.
And it would kind of introduce. So maybe, the other thought is maybe that's introducing the conflict too fast. Maybe we need to just kind of set up the characters first.
Right. Yeah, the thing
which I think is what you're getting at.
Yeah, I don't think the first number isn't to set up the conflict. It's just to introduce the characters, and you do want to do some kind of what is their generic situation / motivation, but you don't want to be hardcore into, okay, here's what you can, after this you can see what the plot is going to sort of develop into. But before we go further, we need to name the characters. You suggested that Joel be the boyfriend, but I would say that since the girl is the main character, she should be called Jolene, and her boyfriend should be called something else.
How about Greg?
Alright, Jolene and Greg. Now, we need a best friend character that she can confide in and talk to and such, who also is an actress with her.
So the best friend is a successful actor, and maybe even the main character in the musical within the musical they're in.
Right.
And so she's they're friends, but she's also jealous. And I don't know, maybe that's too complicated because she needs to be when she gets this chicken job, she's gotta confide in someone, and I think that's what you were getting at for this character, right?
I don't think she needs to be jealous like the thing is, she's gonna get fired from this musical job pretty soon into the movie, so, and she'll, as she's looking for work while she's working her chicken job, she's gonna be looking elsewhere since she already got fired from this musical. So, I don't really think it's a conflict to have her best friend be the lead in this musical.
So, okay, so her friend is like, yes, she is being successful in the specific thing that she just failed at, but she's also just a really good friend and is like
Right.
trying to use her connections in the business to get her a new acting job. And it's
Yes.
at first you get the sense that it's kind of a race between her actually landing an acting job and her being found out by her boyfriend,
Right.
by Greg.
Uh-huh.
But after Act 1, you kind of suddenly realize that Greg is falling in love with the chicken suit girl, and
That's the
it's
Act
it's like
1
the
finale. The Act 1
the
finale
mid
song is
musical twist.
right. We see him falling in love. We see her realizing that he's falling in love with her. We
Right.
see, stuff like that. Yeah. So
Okay.
that's a good. Okay. So
So, but we still need to name the friend, is what you're getting at.
right. What's the friend's name?
That was the original thing. Beth.
Okay. The friend's name is Beth.
Yeah.
So, are there any other characters we think we might need?
Let's see. I feel like we're definitely gonna need a boss at the restaurant.
Right. Let's call the boss Snowy Woodson.
All right, I'm liking this. So this is clearly in the Advice cinematic universe, then.
Yeah. Well, the Joel Cinematic Universe.
The Joel cinematic. What
Which-
was Snowy Woodson's question?
We actually had two people that we named Snowy Woodson.
Oh, good. So there's clearly just a bunch of people named Snowy Woodson in the Joel cinematic universe. So there's no reason that this person is either one of those people, but
But they might be.
they might be.
You'll have
We
to
could,
keep watching to find out.
Sure.
They're all played by, Johnny Depp. Alright. So, right. Okay, so he's the boss, and I think that's probably good for now, since until we develop more plot, we won't know who we need. Alright, so opening song.
Right.
We open with her at home with a boyfriend. I do like. Oh no, this is good. We open it. I'm riffing on your original idea. So we open at her at home with the boyfriend. Song. We see their relationship is good. Then we transition to her at the musical within the musical. We see her with her friend. We see them in the show. And then the very end of the song, she messes up and she gets fired. Like the first line after the end of the song is like, "You're fired," or shortly thereafter. Okay.
All right. So okay. The beginning bit with the boyfriend, is that where you're imagining like the first song being?
It's all one song. So like, have you ever seen Beauty and the Beast?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. So she's
in
like
the beginning, right? Like she's walking through the town, and
Right.
the song continues. She's like moving. Now she's in the bookshop. Now here we go. Now she's at the bakery. Here we go. And then now she's meeting Gaston. Like the song kind of meanders and is not a short song.
Okay.
So
I see what you're getting at. I like it. So it's not like it's not fully the musical within the musical song.
Right.
But
transitions
it does
from being,
end with it. It transitions into it.
Right. It ends with like, because the first song you want to be like a big chorus number. That's how it's a big chorus number, is everyone who's in that musical is in the opening song at the end. So
and she just completely screws up. She like I don't know. She like
trips
misses her
over something
line
and like
it's-
knocks over an entire set and people.
Yeah.
it's a big screw up, and she gets fired.
Causes a bunch of damage, and it's clearly so. It's like obvious that this isn't the first like mistake she's made. It's probably
Right.
like the biggest mistake, and it's just kind of like
It's the last straw.
the last straw. Yeah. Maybe you get that from the director. Like, listen, I've been willing to overlook some things, but this is too much.
Right.
We're gonna have to find someone else.
Right. So she leaves the set, and actually the next scene I think you would see her eating lunch with her friend, her best friend who, with us. What do we say?
We've definitely got to go to the friend before we go to the boyfriend, because
Yeah.
I think she should be hiding everything from the boyfriend. He should still think she's going to be in that same musical.
Yes, that's absolutely correct. Right. So the next scene is her eating lunch with Beth and saying something
Yeah.
like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. Like, there's
What
not
am
a
I
lot of
gonna tell
opportunities out
Greg?
there for actors, right? So, and then the end of that scene is her saying like, it's like, honestly, at this point, I would take any job that comes along, and cut to the chicken suit.
So we've got to. I think we've got to establish at some point that Greg is not working. Like, it shouldn't be a viable opportunity for Jolene to not have a job.
I mean, honestly, they live in LA, so Greg, even with Greg working, it can still not be a viable option that she.
That's true.
I mean, all you have to do is in this conversation with Beth, say, what am I gonna do? I can't afford rent if I don't have a job. Something like that.
Yeah,
makes
we're
it clear
gonna
that
have
she
to
has to have a
move.
job.
Then I won't. If we have to move away from the city, I'll never get back into acting.
Right.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So there really doesn't have to be a whole lot of explanation to that. I think,
Right.
yeah, I agree.
So we cut to the. I would take any job that comes along. We cut to the chicken costume. She's not in the chicken costume. It's just like Snowy holding up the costume, and her being like, "Well, we do need someone to." No. We don't cut to the chicken costume. Maybe we do cut to the chicken costume. What if
I think we cut to her like with a with her resume, like sitting in. So okay, there's two ways we can go, and I think I'm just gonna describe one, and then I'm gonna end up liking it. So I'm gonna pick this one first. She's obviously tried acting jobs. So there's maybe a quick. She does a quick song of like trying to like it's basically a trying to find a job song,
right?
And she's like, it's a montage of auditions as the song.
Oh, that's good.
And
yeah.
all of the casting directors that she's auditioning for are like just rotating parts in the song where they're like, no, I think we'll go with someone else, or like,
right,
something like that. They're just doing like a bit of background basically, and she's getting like more and more desperate, and like in the end she's like giving this really like passionate like finale to the song, and then the camera turns around and it's Snowy at his desk, and he's like, well, I mean, you seem qualified, but are you sure this is what you're looking for? And she's like, I'm desperate.
Right.
And he's like, all right, let me show you what we've got.
Right. Okay, that's good.
And
That's
then
a
there's
great idea.
chicken costume.
Yes. So what do you think? This is just an idea. I don't actually know if I like it. What do you think about before that, a scene in between the lunch and the job searching song where she goes home to the boyfriend? And we see her lying to him. Oh, how was work? Oh, it was so good. We did this new musical number today. Blah blah blah. I can't wait for you to come see it. That kind of thing. So we can clearly see that she's not telling the boyfriend anything.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think we need to kind of know the stakes as we go into the job hunt montage.
Right.
That makes sense to me. So maybe they have like they do a like a shorter version of the initial song, of like their section of the initial song.
A reprise. Nice.
Yeah, and it's kind of like he's singing like basically the same thing, the same kind of upbeat thing, and she's got like this,
An alternate version where she's
like internal monologue of like, how am I going to keep this up? So
that is perfect.
Yes.
Man, if only we were good musicians, we could like write this musical.
It seems like a lot of work to write a musical. Otherwise, I would be like, so if I didn't have a job, but I was like, financially supported, I might be kind of interested to try it. But
right, just to try writing the opening song and the reprise, I think would take like months.
Oh yeah.
Okay, right. So, excuse me. So that's perfect. We do the reprise. We go to the job hunting song. She gets the chicken costume. And should we the next thing her just be outside in the costume and the boyfriend comes, or is it something else?
I think, all right, so at this point she's talked to Greg and it's clear that she's lying at this point. She's gone through the job search, only managed to land this chicken suit job. So next has got to be like her first day on the job, where I don't know if she should be like, initially optimistic and it just kind of like quickly fades away, like, oh man, how long have I been here? And like Snowy Woodson's like, all right, great first 2 hours of your shift, only 8 more to go or something,
Right.
And she's just like, I feel like there's some sequence where she kind of like just descends into monotony, and then all of a sudden it's just like a snap of panic because Greg shows up.
Right. Yeah, that's probably a good point. So we should start out with just a normal day of her job.
Yeah.
And how terrible it is. Like, we can see lots of different people laughing at her. Like, what a ridiculous costume, blah, blah, blah.
Maybe it should even be like a full day, and she meets up with Beth at the end, and they're like, she's like, all right, well, how is it? And Jolene's like, oh, it's terrible. I've got to get out of here. The only thing keeping me here is trying to get another audition. Have you found anything for me? And she's like, oh, not yet. And so, I mean, I think these things are kind of like interchangeable at this point, because there's just a couple of points we need to cover, right? I don't know what the best order is necessarily.
So we see a normal day, and then I agree that we should have another job hunting scene. I just wonder if it's best to... Yeah, probably best to include Beth, because I guess we can have, like, her saying how terrible the job is, and I think at this point we should have some conversation between Beth and Jolene where Beth is like, have you told Greg about this yet? And she's like, no, and she's like, you're gonna have to tell him eventually, right? And she's like, I know, but I just can't, I want to have something lined up before I tell him.
Right. So I think that's a good scene to have. Then, the next scene we see another day at the job, but now, it seems like a monotonous normal day, but then Greg shows up. Right.
And she's terrified. I don't know if it's appropriate to have a song here at this point. What do you think?
I don't know. So let me describe the scene that I'm picturing, and we'll see if maybe there's a way to fit a song in, but maybe not. So I'm thinking that she's like outside the store, right?
Right.
And so, she's like doing her thing, and she sees him walking by, and she's like, trying to become less conspicuous so that he doesn't like pay attention. And she's like, scooting around to the side of the building to not be right next to the main entrance, and she's like, keeping an eye out. And he goes in the store.
Right.
And so she's like, like he's in this area. Oh no, what if one of the coworkers mentions something? That'd be kind of dumb. Never mind. You're not gonna just like talk to some random guy about the girl in the chicken suit on the street.
Right.
But point being, like, he's there, and she's got this like internal, like her worries going on. Maybe in a song, I don't know. That might be kind of like a really repetitive song. Like,
right. The only issue the issue I can see with the song is I don't know what else she can say besides, "Oh no, my boyfriend's here and I don't want to be discovered."
Right. So I mean, maybe it's just a really quick thing where he like stops into the store, and you can see her like just frozen outside. And maybe Snowy Woodson comes by and is like, "Hey,
get back to work.
Get back to work. Where'd all the energy go? We're not paying you to stand there."
Right,
I feel like Snowy should be pretty nice though.
Yeah, Snowy is a tough but fair boss.
Yeah.
But the thing is, we need to have some kind of interaction between Greg and Jolene in the costume, because we basically have 2 times for Greg to start falling in love with her.
Yeah.
Before
okay, so here's I didn't actually end up getting, but here's what I had in mind, is that he's in the store for just a quick minute picking something up, and she's like panicking. Snowy comes by, she's, they have a quick interaction, and then he comes out and like glances over, but then he just walks away. And she's like, sigh of relief. And then he kind of like pauses and turns back around. And he's like, "Hey, must be kind of a crazy job being the chicken."
Right.
And she just, doesn't answer and is kind of awkward.
Kind of nods.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. Doesn't say anything.
Right.
And he kind of turns to walk away again, but then turns back and is like,
one time I had a job when I was in college where
yeah, exactly.
I had to dress up as a corn dog.
Yeah,
and that was humiliating. So
I guess
keep it up. I feel bad for you. So good luck. And she's like, nods
again.
And he's like, "You know what? You're right. I don't need to be ashamed of myself. I was just trying to make a living, and you don't need to be ashamed of yourself either."
Yeah, exactly.
And then he's like, "Let me give you a hug," and she's like, "No," and he just like hugs her anyway, and she's kind of like, and he's like, "All right, have a great day."
Yeah.
So I would say, yeah. So he then does, leaves at that point. I would say.
Right. That's their first interaction, and he goes away thinking like, anytime I come back here, anytime I happen to come back here, I'm going to interact with the chicken now because we've got this connection.
Right. The next time he comes back, it's going to be like, "Hey, chicken person."
Right. The next time he comes back, she doesn't see him coming, and so there's like even more panic when he like, specifically comes up and starts talking to her before going in. Maybe he was just walking by too. Like maybe he doesn't return to the store, but he just goes by there frequently.
I think before we get there, we have to. Right. So he leaves. She's like, "What a relief," and he says, and then that's kind of the end of the scene. And so the next scene is her at home with him, right? And so she's kind of like, "Oh, what did you do today?" And he's like, "Oh, after work, I went and picked up some, a new batteries for our remote control. Right. So excited to watch The Office or some show." And she's like, "Haha, yeah." So
ready to whip up YouTube and watch some Joel the Podcast.
Just mention Joel the Podcast by name in the movie.
Obviously, we exist in the Joel Cinematic Universe as very successful podcasters.
We're like, yeah. And so, right, and she's like, "Okay, right, so no need to go." It's very conspicuous, like, "No need to go back to that store again, though, right?" And he's like, "Yeah, I don't think there should be any reason." And she's like, "All right, good to hear." And he's kind of like, whatever, that's kind of weird, but I don't know. And then the next day, he shows up because the batteries that he bought were just dead. And so this is his excuse to come back, right? Like, and she's of course even more terrified this time. Like, you mentioned.
Are they actually dead, or does she like see right then that he's lying about the batteries just to come back?
No, they are actually dead this time.
Okay, all right.
So this time he's not coming back to see her. He actually has a good reason to come back. But whatever happens this time has to motivate him to want to keep coming back.
Okay.
With flimsier and flimsier excuses every time.
I think we need a really cliche moment at this one to really just hammer home the fact that he is, like, all of a sudden falling in love with the chicken.
Uh-huh.
So, like, they, have another, like, after he grabs the batteries, he comes back out. They have another, like, one-sided conversation where he's just, reminiscing about his corn dog days. Or, it could just be something, completely separate, totally random, whatever. But then he, like, turns to go, but he drops the batteries.
Right,
and they both reach down for the battery. And, like, touch hands, and she, like, recoils and, like, stumbles away.
Uh-huh.
And, like, you get the close-up of his face, like, looking over at the chicken. And then a close-up of the expressionless chicken costume. And then he's like, well, have a good day. And then he turns, and, like, we follow him down the street then. And he's singing, like, this upbeat song about falling in love with the chicken as he, like, skips down the street and waves to strangers and, like, gives candy to babies and dumb stuff that you see in, like, musical whatever,
right.
that sort of upbeat.
Right, so my issue with that is that he's, first of all, I think there should be more that gets him to fall in love with her than just, like, one of those moments. Like, I think there should be something in their interaction before that's, like, much more deep and not, like, hey, chummy, if you know what I mean. Like, he interprets, like, he says something like, I don't know. I don't even know what he says. He says something like, do you ever feel like, we're meant for something better? And she just, like, nods her head. And he's like, man, we have such a deep spiritual connection, or something like that. And then the drop moment, I like that moment, where she goes to pick it up, and then he's like, now, so, I don't know if I guess it's okay if he starts to realize he's falling in love, but I don't know if he would be happy about that, because he already has a girlfriend, right? So it's not like falling in love.
So he's got to be.
Is going to make him
conflicted.
Like, right? He's got to be conflicted. Like, the song has to be more like, oh, what is this I'm feeling? This is
yeah.
wrong.
So he's got to come away from this, like, pretty confused.
Right.
So, like, they definitely, I like what you're getting at, is they have, like, this deep moment, and then the battery thing happens, and he feels, like, this weird connection, and he's kind of uncomfortable about it.
Right.
So he's got and that's the song he sings at that point.
Right.
And that's how we know.
At the end of the song, you hear him resolve to go back again the next day.
Right. It's kind of like a, he's like really conflicted, but I think you can kind of tell he's like, I'll just have to go back and see, I guess.
Right.
He's
like conflicted, but he decides, you know what, I have to explore what this is.
Right. I need to know, because, what if, you would always regret not finding out.
Right.
So.
Right. Okay. So, we're nearly there. I feel like we need another scene with the friend.
Right.
But I'm not sure what it should be.
Maybe, so okay, I think at some point around here, there should be a point where all three of them are together. Maybe they like go out to dinner or something.
Like a double date.
Sure. That could work. Maybe, okay, so maybe kind of like unreal. Okay. I don't know. When you said that, were you picturing like Beth also being in a long-term relationship?
Yeah, Beth and Snowy are in a relationship.
Oh, Beth and Snowy.
I just made that up, but yes, Beth is in. I mean, I don't know. It doesn't have to be a long-term relationship. Just Beth and her boyfriend, who we don't really see very much of, are out with. I mean, it could be Snow if you wanted to be comical, but
if you're good with him being like a relatively unimportant character, we could say that he's been around for a little while, but it's not super serious. It's the sort of thing where like he could go on. It wouldn't be weird to go on a double date with like an established couple, but. So like, let me describe the scene, and then we can talk about whether it makes sense or whether we just want to do something else.
Okay, before you describe the scene, it's not Snowy Woodson, because then it would definitely come up that she's the chicken.
No. Definitely not Snowy.
Alright, go on.
Here's what happens. They're on a double date at like a kind of a nice restaurant.
Uh-huh.
And Beth and her boyfriend are like, having just normal polite conversation with Jolene and Greg.
Uh-huh.
And Beth's boyfriend is kind of oblivious, but Beth can definitely tell that they haven't talked about it, and they're both like a little bit awkward around each other. And she's like, I know why Jolene is being weird about Greg, but why is Greg being weird about Jolene?
Right. Yeah, that's
and
good.
So there's like a weird
this is a song, and it's a solo of of Beth's inner thoughts. So we see the conversation, and then we hear in song what Beth is thinking about what they're saying.
And I think it should basically be like what the audience would be thinking at this point, right? Like, or not? Well, not really though.
It's not really, because the audience knows why. The audience knows why Joel is. Sorry, not Joel. Why Greg is weird.
Right.
So, and Beth doesn't know. So Beth's kind of going to be wondering that. And then maybe after the meal, she like takes Greg aside and is like, hey dude, what's going on? And I assume he wouldn't
I don't know
tell
about
her,
that.
right? You don't know about that?
I feel like, I don't know. I feel like they're not. It's not a big mutual friendship kind of thing where they would like be talking to each other outside of the interaction with Jolene. Or at least, I don't know. Maybe it is.
Okay.
Maybe we just make it that.
The way I imagined it is not like they're friends, so she's wanting to know what's going on with him. It's more like, hey, you're dating my best friend, so if something's going on, I need to know about it. But maybe it would be better if it was more like, hey, get your shit together because, she's in love with you, so, you better not hurt her, that kind of thing. It's not really what's going on. It's more of a...
Yeah. I don't know. I wasn't picturing that being aggressive at all.
Alright, then we don't have to do that. That's fine.
Yeah. Maybe that comes later, because there's obviously got to be some point in the second act where...
Later, she pulls him aside, like, things are really weird. We'll get to that, but things are really weird. She says, what is going on here, man? And he confesses. He says, there's this other girl that I've, she's the chicken mascot at this at this electronics store. I can't keep my mind off her. And then, and so at this point, Beth.
But at that point, Beth would realize, right?
She would realize what's going on at this point, but she doesn't tell him because she doesn't want him to know, Jolene's secret just yet. But that's kind of the end.
That's why. Right.
Right. So that's kind of near the end where I think before she can resolve the situation herself, things end up resolving themselves.
Yeah,
but,
that's got to be like basically the second to last thing before
Right.
we get to the big reveals.
right. But anyway, back to here. We see the dinner and everything's acting weird, and we hear Beth's thoughts. That's fine. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay, because
And then afterwards, there's maybe like she pulls him aside and she's like, "Hey, everything all right?" Or maybe not. Maybe she does that.
I feel
with,
like it's not even
with
necessary if we're
Jolene.
going to have that be later. Like,
But yeah, she would know about Jolene. So probably, yeah, they're just like, all right, that was weird, but bye.
right, we hear her thoughts in song about how it's weird that they're acting strange, and she wants them to be, together. And then I think
it's also, I feel like it's also kind of like like in her mind, it's kind of like an "I told you so" to Jolene.
right.
She can see things starting to get weird, and maybe doesn't really put it together that any of it's coming from Greg's side yet.
Right. So, I think the only other thing we might need to do here is at the end have Jolene being to Greg, like after the date, and they're just together, just the two of them. Jolene to Greg being like, "Hey, so what are you doing tomorrow?" And he's like, "Oh, nothing much." Like he's, maybe I'll, I'm just gonna come straight home after work, I think. And she's like, "Okay." And so when the next day when he shows up at the store again, she's like, "What's going on here, man? You said you were going straight home."
Yeah.
So, okay. So I think that should lead us into the scene where the final act of scene 1, he shows up, or the final scene of act 1, rather. He shows
Right.
up, with some flimsy excuse for being there, and, like, is really clearly just interested in talking to her. And she's
Right.
like, "What is going on?" And we get a big musical number where we see her realizing that he's falling in love with her in the chicken costume, and him, singing his feelings to the audience.
Right.
And we see Snowy Woodson. I don't know. It's the last musical. It's always also a big number, so you would somehow get everyone else in the cast involved. Maybe what we needed. I feel like we should have an excuse for Beth to be there. Oh, Beth is there talking to Jolene, saying like, you have to tell him sometime, right? And then
Yeah, he's like, "I saw
shows
how
up.
weird you were at dinner. You gotta like get this straightened out."
Right, and then
So there's
then
like
he
the
shows up.
internal. He shows up. There's an internal, like, there's a part of the song where it's like the conflict, but it starts off as the conflict between Beth and Jolene, and then he just jumps in out of nowhere in the song, basically going like, "I'm in love with the chicken," and then everyone is just like, "What? Excuse me?" And
Well, I
then
feel
the
like- I
song
feel
just
like him-
totally shifts tone to that.
I feel like he's not announcing to the world that he's in love with the chicken yet. Him singing
Okay.
that is more a revelation to the audience. Like him saying like, "You know what?
Okay,
I wasn't
sure.
sure about this at first, but I can't deny my feelings that I'm really in love with this person in the chicken costume, and I have to do something about it."
Yeah.
And her realizing it not through him singing it, just through his, the way he's talking and randomly showing up, and her being like, "Wait, is this really happening?" And Beth being like, maybe Beth doesn't realize that he's in love with her because she hasn't seen the previous interactions. Beth just
Right.
is saying like,
So there's
Beth is just saying to herself, "Oh man, I really hope that Jolene tells him what's going on."
right. And maybe she sees at this point the interaction, but she doesn't understand like the background, so she's just not thinking anything of it.
Uh-huh.
And then we can open up Act 2 with the talk between Jolene and Beth, where she's like, "No, you don't understand. He's falling in love with the chicken girl." And Beth is like, "What are you talking about? You were just hanging out at the store." And she's like, "No, I haven't told him. He's falling in love with the chicken girl, not with me." Like
Right.
maybe
He doesn't know
maybe-
that it's me.
Yeah, Beth is kind of like on the side, like not quite realizing what has gone on yet,
Right.
and then that
Okay.
opens up Act Two.
All right, so we're at an hour 20 now, so I don't really think we can go into Act 2 today.
Yeah, this is a good stopping point, I think.
So, given that, we received a Skype message from David
You did?
about 20 minutes ago telling us that he sent us an email while we were recording.
Oh,
Do you want to read that now or just get to it next week?
yeah. Let's. This this is hilarious. We've absolutely got to address this email. The subject line is "Sports is dumbass."
Oh no. Are we psychics? Are we psychics?
This is great. All right, so here's the email. Hi. Sorry to interrupt during your live recording, but here's an email. As you can guess from the title, I don't like sports, but people I know like sports, and I sometimes hear people talking about sports, and it reminds me of the things that you guys talking about. So I appreciate you guys putting your time in to watch sports and let me know what's happening, so that I don't have to watch sports by myself to have a vague idea of what people are talking about when they're talking about sports, even though sports is dumbass. So Alex doesn't have to feel bad about spending like 10 minutes talking about sports every week because it's not useless.
All
There's
right.
a bit more to the email, but I mean, does that just solve all our issues? Are we doing a public service without even realizing it?
I'm not sure in what way you think it's solving our issues. Can you elaborate?
I mean, should we just not change anything then based on this
Right.
feedback?
So, really, what we should do is we need to hear from Cephalopod Master. Do
Right.
you prefer... So, I feel like we can mostly eliminate Philadelphia sports updates, because definitely no one cares about those. It would be more interesting for us to just talk about general interesting sports news than, like, specifically Philadelphia, because I like them.
So instead of following particular teams, we kind of move to a general sports interest segment.
We already talk about general sports topics. Like, we talked about Tom Brady. We
Right.
talked about Drew Brees. We already talk about interesting things that happen in sports. We just
Right.
also talk about Philadelphia sports, which I don't think we need to do anymore. So,
Yeah.
but
So we don't need to focus on particular sports teams unless they've done something interesting.
Right.
For example, Philadelphia and Purdue. I feel like we'll still tend to talk about Purdue pretty frequently. We'll probably still bring up at least one of the Philadelphia sports teams, but
right. So
maybe
so
not a
my question
rundown
to
of everything that's happened.
My question to Cephalopod would then be this. Would you prefer if we continued the format where we just kind of talked about what happened on the air, as long as it took? Or would it be better for you to do what we said, where it's literally just a 1 minute recap of everything interesting that happened in sports that week? So I think I doubt we'll receive his response before next week's episode, considering the fact that this episode won't be posted by then.
Well, it might be. I might just post 2 in a row now, which I
Okay.
did a couple of weeks ago. But I
If
don't know.
we
We'll
don't
see.
receive a response, actually, I would say even if we do, we should try next week doing the 1 minute edition and see how it is, and then
Yeah.
making a decision after that. So Cephalopod, pay attention next week to hear our 1 minute sports update and see if it's better or worse than what we're currently doing. But we do
Right.
appreciate the feedback, and honestly, I'm surprised it took 2 years for someone to tell us that they didn't like hearing sports. All right.
I genuinely cannot believe we got this email during the podcast where we discussed it for the first time in 2 years.
That's hilarious.
That's hilarious.
All right. Read the rest of the email.
There's a little bit left, completely unrelated, but here's a listener question. Is not eating food vegan? If so, does that mean that everyone is part-time vegan except when they're not eating meat or whatever?
Interesting question that I think we should discuss another time, since we've run very long today.
I was gonna say, in order to do this question justice, I really feel like we need to spend a few minutes on it, and I would rather end this episode now because, well, actually, this is an odd-numbered podcast, so I'm going to have to listen to it. This is probably the last podcast that we will include for consideration, right?
Well, it's the last one before the anniversary episode, so I don't know how we could include any further than this.
Good point. All right. I guess that answers that.
That's it. Thanks for listening, everybody, to this long episode. I'm Alex.
I'm Alex.
And this has been
Joel.